Thank you very much. It is my pleasure to present you today the results of our 2 randomized control trials that we conducted in collaboration with publishing journals to check if reminding peer reviewers of the most important reporting items improves the reporting then in the published articles. So we have seen yesterday that reporting guidelines are so important that, for example, you as a reader of a study can judge the credibility of this study, can replicate the research, can use the results to implement in systematic reviews, but that also doctors and healthcare personnel can use the results to make clinical decisions. So adhering to reporting guidelines is very important. It has been raising awareness for them in the last 25 years. And we have seen, as shown yesterday in one of the key lectures, some improvements in the reporting quality. But when we look at all the assessments, we still see that the overall message is that the reporting quality is poor, it's not adequately reported, and it's far from satisfactory. So I really believe that we have also to come somehow a bit away from this raising awareness approach and really try new approaches to increase the adherence to reporting guidelines. So we proposed an intervention, a very low cost, simple intervention, basically asking peer reviewers to check if the 10 most important and underreported reporting items are adequately reported. And if that has then an effect on the reporting quality in the published article. So we wanted to generate high quality evidence. So we designed 2 superiority randomized control trials using the submitted manuscript as the unit of randomization. In the first randomized control trial, we focused on the consort reporting guideline. So this is the reporting guideline for primary results of randomized control trials. So this was the population we included. In the second randomized control trial, we focused on the SPIRIT reporting guideline. And there we used as the population manuscripts that contained RCT protocols. The intervention was then in both RCTs sending a reminder email to the peer reviewers and asking them to check the 10 most important and underreported items in consort PR, of course, the consort items, and the SPIRIT PR, 10 SPIRIT items. And the control group was a usual peer review as it was the journal practice. And the outcome we were interested in is really if then this intervention improves the reporting quality compared to the control arm. So we received ethical approval, we contacted publishing journals, and we were very pleased that the BMJ publishing group as well as PLOS agreed to participate in this trial. And to make this trial possible, they had to provide daily reports of newly submitted manuscripts so that we basically could screen them on a daily basis and look which manuscripts are eligible for our trial. Then eligible manuscripts, if they were sent out for peer review and peer review accepted, they were randomized, and then we had to send the intervention email to the peer reviewers in the intervention arm. The journalists also had to give us access to the editorial system so that we actually could send these intervention emails to the peer reviewers, so that it appeared that these emails come really from the journal. We did not inform authors and peer reviewers about this study, and outcome assessors were blinded, and it was conducted in duplicate. We planned for a sample size, or in the consort PR trial, for 166 published articles, and in the SPIRIT PR, 106 published articles. So we recruited as long manuscripts until we reached these numbers of really then published articles. This is the flowchart, and this is just to briefly show you the amount of work. So in the consort PR trial, we screened 34,000 submitted articles. A big amount of these articles were then not eligible because they did not describe randomized control trial results. And also, of course, many were not sent out for peer review, but we could then randomize 510 of those, 256 in the consort arm and 254 in the intervention. And then again, a quite large proportion was not accepted, and we ended up, so in total, with 122 publications in the intervention arm and with 121 in the control arm. For Spirit PR, that was only conducted in BMJ Open. These numbers were a bit smaller. We could here randomize 245 articles, and the proportion of rejected articles was also smaller. So we ended up with 90 in the intervention and 88 in the control arm. The key characteristics of included trials, so the sample size was around 250 to 200 in these included trials. Most of them were parallel group trials using 2 trial arms. More than half of the trials were multicentric, and we had very few industry trials. So the vast majority were non-industry trials. And the most common tested interventions were some sort of behavioral lifestyle intervention, but also drug trials were quite common. So what did we then find? We actually didn't find that our intervention didn't make any difference. So for the concert PR trial, in the intervention arm, we had a adherence to reporting guidelines of 69%, and also in the control group, the adherence was 67%. And a bit more depressing for Spirit PR. So here the intervention arm had 46% adequate reporting, and also the control arm 46%. Here you see the same results a bit in more detail. So these are the same overall results. And if you look at the separate items that we assessed, I mean, you can really see that they are very randomly distributed. So for some items it was in favor of the intervention, for some in favor of the control, but there's clearly no overall effect. The pre-specified secondary outcome, we were also interested in the median days until first decision was reached. And of course, here we have a high variability in the data. So of course, some studies, they are quite quickly accepted, and for some it takes much longer. But here also you can see no real pattern. So for the console PR in the intervention, it was a bit quicker. For the Spirit PR, it was a bit longer in the intervention. Then the proportion of accepted articles, this was very similar distributed between the treatment arms. As you could see in the flow chart, more accepted in the Spirit PR trial. And then the proportion of articles rejected after the first round of peer review, again, very similar distributed amongst intervention and control arm in the console PR trial. In the Spirit PR trial, we see a bit of a difference. So only 12% were rejected in the intervention, and 20 in the control. But these differences, or these numbers here, are really so small that it's hard to say if this is a chance finding or if something that we should further look into. I think in the end now it's worth highlighting the limitation that we do not really know what happened to our to the manuscripts that were in the intervention but were not published. So we don't know the effect here. But I think the same acceptance rates between the treatment arms is somehow reassuring of in terms of the interpretation of the primary results. And we also have a subsample of the peer review comments of accepted and rejected articles that we plan to look into more detail to see if there's somehow a difference between accepted and rejected articles. So to conclude, I think we can really say with high certainty now that this intervention did unfortunately not improve the adherence to reporting quality. And we can speculate about reasons and solutions. For me personally, I think one of the main reasons is that peer reviewers, they have already so many tasks, they're getting very few credit for what they're doing. So probably we shouldn't burden them with more additional tasks. And also, I mean, maybe they're also not really formally trained, or not more than the authors who already fill out the checklist. That could also be a reason. And the solution might then maybe be that journals could hire experts who check the reporting guideline. A study by Blanco et al., a randomized trial, has actually very nicely shown that this is very effective. But then, of course, I mean, the question is again, like, who is paying for that, and are journals willing to hire such experts? I would like to thank the fantastic team who conducted this study, mainly Sally Hopewell, who supervised me during my postdoc in Oxford, but also really big thanks to the participating journal, especially Sarah Schroeder, who really showed us here the way how this study can be implemented at the journal level, and also the team from PLOS that pushed hard to make this study work. you can find the protocols openly available, and I'm very much looking forward to your questions. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Benjamin. And this shows that the PRC is not afraid of negative results. So I think we have Lex here.
Yeah, well,
to start.
thank you very much. I'd like to make the same remark. This is great work, and it takes courage to present a negative trial. But the bad news is that most trials of this type of interventions are negative, I believe. And we've seen some evidence over the day. Authors don't read instructions to authors. Reviewers don't read instructions to reviewers. And your solution makes sense, of course. Hire a professional to do the work. Okay, but that's expensive and not doable. The alternative might be develop good software that can distill from a manuscript the points of attention and offer that to reviewers. Would that be an idea to help? Being a reviewer myself quite often, I would like that, to have a software program telling me, hey, listen, have a look at this one. The software believes this is wrong. Please have a look. And when it's not 500 points, I will likely do it.
Mm-hmm. I think there are some softwares in development or already available, some helps to help authors, but also reviewers to assess reporting guidelines. But I think it's still not that simple to really check reporting. Even, I mean, we do it in duplicate, and we see actually that we have many discussions if this is now adequately reported or not adequately reported. So, I mean, I hope in the future that maybe artificial intelligence or machine learning will be a good tool to help us there, but I think we are not there yet at the moment. But yeah, that would be great.
Thank you. We'll go Leah, then Malcolm, then Robbie.
Thanks, Leah Welty, Northwestern. Thanks for this really interesting talk. And that's an unbelievable amount of articles you all went through. So I'm really impressed. My question is about whether or not you looked at interim parts of the process. For instance, if you're getting better reviews back from reviewers based on the intervention, and it's making for less work for someone like your statistical reviewer or your statistical editor, whose workload may be increased or larger or usual if you don't do that, but in the end, it may not be making a difference in the publication.
Thank you very much. That's a very good comment. Yeah, I mean, that's what I want to say with this subsample. So we have from some journals the peer review comments. We haven't analyzed them yet, but that's exactly what we would like to see if they are maybe more structured, more to the point, especially, for example, if you think about protocol publication. I mean, journals say that they don't want to discuss design issues anymore, for example, because the studies are usually already running, but really focus on transparent reporting. And I think that's surely something that we want to see. If maybe peer review actually pointed it out nicely, but maybe authors didn't implement it or didn't implement it correctly, or maybe the other way, peer reviewers just ignored our email, and at that stage already the intervention failed. That's certainly something we're looking at.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, Mark McLeod from Edinburgh. Lovely study. Welcome to the club. I'm interested in how you defined your minimum effect size of interest. And the reason for that is, as I understand your point estimate, is that compliance has gone up from around 66% to around 68% non-significantly. But for a really trivial intervention like one email, if taken together with a cluster of interventions, that's actually not nothing and might be worth having.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a more detailed slide on our assumption for the sample size, which I didn't implement. But it's a very good question. So we said for the concept PR trial, so we had many different assessments. And first we thought actually also the baseline, so the control group adherence is lower. But then when we talked to the journals, so because we took some data where we knew about the adherence to consort, but then when we, for example, talked to the journals, they said several of the items we assessed, they are already standardizedly implemented. So then we had to recalculate our sample size, and we assumed that it's around this result that we got, around 66%, and we wanted to have an improvement of at least 1 or 1.5 items. So we thought, I mean, and what we see here now in our results, I mean, it was like around 3% maybe. I mean, not significant, but 3% would, if you think that would relate to 1/3 of an item. And we thought this is really not, I mean, nothing that even if we would have a bigger sample size and higher power, and this effect is true actually, then even then it wouldn't make sense, we thought. So we thought at least one item you should improve with this intervention. But of course, that's the question, like what is a meaningful difference?
Robbie.
Hi, Robert Thibault with Metrics at Stanford. I've seen a few of these studies where there's not much of an effect with a peer review intervention. And I'm wondering, we often try to load peer reviewers with something extra, so the cost is zero because we're just asking peer reviewers to do something else, but then the benefit also turns out to be close to zero. And so I'm wondering, at the end, you were suggesting that maybe somebody from the journal gets paid to do this. And I'm working on a related study where we're trying to think of the cost benefit analysis. Like, have you thought about how much it would cost for somebody to do this, and then whether the benefit would justify that cost? So kind of related to the minimum effect size that Malcolm brought up.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I was not involved in the other study that was implemented, that checked the effect of hiring an additional peer reviewer checking reporting guidelines. But I think that is really, I mean, that intervention really showed to be effective. And there, I think it would be very meaningful to look what the cost is and the cost effectiveness. I personally think the general problem is that probably the more famous journals who have better resources, and there anyway the problem is already somehow smaller, but then maybe the smaller journals with fewer resources who would profit more from the intervention of hiring a peer review expert, they probably would be less likely to hire such a person. But I mean, that's just my personal feeling. I don't have any data to underline this. And yes, I mean, our intervention, I mean, we really said, we knew this result from the other trial, and we really said, yeah, but it's probably not very likely that all journals are going to do that. That's why we focused on this intervention, because we said, if that works, I mean, everybody can easily implement it. But yeah, I mean, we see a real effect. Yeah.
Great work, thanks.
Before this question, I just want to ask, any questions from online?
No virtual questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Last
Thank
question.
you, Anita de Waard, Elsevier. Thank you so much for your work. We also, as are a number of others, are looking at an automated consort guideline checking tool. But in working on it, I keep wondering, and I'm new to guidelines, so maybe this is a naive idea, but why isn't there simply a template that the authors fill out? I mean, is that really too much to ask? Could it be a machine readable template, hopefully, so that you could then populate databases with all the details of these studies? Maybe it would even be concomitant with the various clinical trials databases. I mean, could there be a template that is both machine generated and machine readable, so we don't need to have the AI to, you know, very complexly pull out these rather difficult elements from a narrative text?
So just that I understand you correctly, so you mean a template to, instead of the manuscripts, you don't mean the checklist?
In
that is
addition
anyway.
to the manuscript, perhaps, why don't they
Okay.
just fill out the checklist?
I
So
mean,
the way
that-
it works at the Lancet right now, in fact, is that there is a checklist and the authors indicate which page number the element in the consort checklist, which manuscript page number the element of the checklist appears in, which seems a little illogical, frankly, and then the editors do go in the Lancet, big journal, and go and check that indeed that item is on that page number. Wouldn't it be simple to say, just submit the table, you know, with your paper and make the table machine readable? And again, if you can connect it to some machine construction form of the trial in the first place, now the machines can talk to each other and we can all get out of the way,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Absolutely. No, but I think that's also what Paul Glacier talked yesterday. I mean, these checklists, they are submitted, but so I think one problem is that nobody's looking at them. And then I think there's another problem is that it's also a bit more complicated. So for example, one item is sample size. And I think everybody who, for example, submits a randomized control trial knows somehow that the sample size needs to be justified, but there are specific parts that you really have to report. And for example, we saw that one of the sub items is, right, for example, the assumed values in the control arm and intervention arm, that this is hardly ever reported or very often not reported, while things that everybody knows, alpha and beta value, that they are nearly always reported. But I think, so even if you have a template and you say sample size justification. People will fill it out, but it's a question if they will fill it out correctly. But I think it's an interesting point that you're raising. So for example, journals trials for study protocols, they really offer you a template to fill out instead of writing manuscripts. So and I think that is very structured and is very helpful. I think some ethical committees are also taking over this approach, and probably you're less creative in your writing process, but yeah, honestly, for randomized control trials, you don't need to be so creative. It's very standardized. So
Right.
yeah, agree with that approach.
Thank you. Last question.
Thanks for the great presentation, Sam Frischsteiner from University of Ottawa. I just wonder if you did any subgroup analysis to see if this type of intervention is more useful for journals with lower impact factor. I just wonder how much these interventions can help reviewers with, the quality of reviewer, how much is it confounding in these results?
Yeah, thank you. So we pre-specified some subgroup analysis. So one of them was like trials with smaller sample size. So for example, looking at if maybe the more bigger or maybe more professional trials adhere better, or if it has a bigger effect in the smaller. And one was also the impact factor. But again, here we didn't see anything really. And I mean, we also don't have that many participating journals. So maybe that's also definitely a limitation of our study that can see such effects. So maybe there aren't.
Thanks.
Cannot certainly say.
Great presentation and crisp and good answers. So thank you very much.